Professor Snyder, thank you for your scholarship. Thank you for your very strong opening statement showing the links between China and Russia that many members of Congress are already praising. My friend Richard Levin would be proud of you having his professorship. But I want to ask you, just like you linked China and Russia, also about the Middle East. And the reality is that as we consider the security supplemental, these issues all have become interlinked. 56 members of Congress, including Speaker Pelosi and myself, wrote a letter to President Biden and Secretary Blinken asking them to stop any offensive weapons transfer to Israel. Do you agree with Speaker Pelosi, myself, and 56 members, especially given what you've written about Netanyahu, that this is not the time to provide offensive weapons?
I think that it's a mistake to believe that there's a military solution in Gaza and that everything that can be gained in Gaza by military means was gained long ago, and that the administration should be using every possible leverage to secure a political solution, including and not limited to the recommendation that you make.
I appreciate that. A lot of my Democratic colleagues listen to you religiously, so I'm hoping they'll listen to you about this. One of the things some of us who've signed that letter have said is have a clean vote on Ukraine. I support it. Most people support it. I think you'd get a total Democratic caucus supporting it. And when it comes to the Israel aid, many of us would support the defensive aid. Some may not, but many would support Iron Dome and others. We just don't want the offensive weapons linked in that package. Do you agree that it makes sense to have separate votes on Ukraine, Taiwan, Israel?
I'm going to refer to Mr. Comer's definition of the limits of my expertise. These are political matters on which you will have better judgment than I.
You have good judgment. I mean, what would you recommend?
I believe that it was politically understandable, but strategically erroneous from the beginning to link the Israel-Gaza conflict with the Russia-Ukraine war. They're two very different kinds of conflicts, and almost any attempt to bring the two of them together creates more friction and misunderstanding than anything else. So while I believe that Israel had to be supported after October 7th, after the horrifying terrorist attacks in Israel, it was a mistake politically, I believe, to link that to an event of an entirely different category, which is the largest land war in the world taking place, the largest land war in Europe since 1945, an encounter of two states, one of which has the second largest military in the world. These are two very different kinds of conflicts. The Israeli-Gaza conflict will hopefully be brought to a political solution this summer. The Russia-Ukraine war, on the other hand, is an interstate conflict which will be won or lost on the battlefield and which requires an entirely different kind and a more serious kind of American engagement over the long run. So if you ask me as an American citizen and as an expert on the region, this is what I think. They're two very different kinds of conflict, and thus far, I believe politically, linking the two has made it harder rather than easier to pass support for Ukraine, and that has had terrifying costs. Not just on the Ukrainian battlefield where people are dying unnecessarily, and not just for Ukrainian civilians who are losing territory and as a result being killed or tortured, but also for our overall position in the world.
I really appreciate your saying that, because there are many of us, the minority in the Democratic caucus, but who have been making your point that let's not have a linkage of these two so that we can vote clearly for the Ukraine aid. Some of us are fine also providing defensive weapons, but don't want to just give a carte blanche to Netanyahu, which I think you have articulated here. I'm hopeful our leadership will listen to you. I'm hopeful Speaker Johnson will listen to you. And I think as much as those who praised your opening statement praise that, they should listen to your advice on this issue. I'll give you the last word.
Well, if I could have the last word. The point that I made earlier about the linkage between China's political warfare and Ukraine is very real. All of the Chinese messaging on this issue is on one side of this issue, all of it. And so if we're serious about resisting Chinese political warfare, passing aid for Ukraine this week would be a sign of that seriousness. Thank you.